In 1985, the New York Mets had an incredibly solid team. Despite missing out on the postseason, the Mets won 98 games that season, and the roster was absolutely stacked. So it made sense why they went on to win the World Series the next year in 86. Gary Carter had a really solid season in 85, hitting 32 home runs and driving in 100 with an OPS over 850. Keith Hernandez only hit 10 homers but still drove in 91, and then you had Darryl Strawberry. Strawberry, one of the best hitters on the Mets during the 80s, hit 29 home runs of his own in 1985, the third season of his career, and became an all-star. The pitching side of things was just as dominant, if not more. In 276 and 2/3 innings thrown, Dwight Gooden pitched to a 1.53 ERA, winning 24 games, striking out 268 hitters, and allowed less than one guy on per inning. This was also all in his age 20 season. Ron Darling was nasty, so were several other guys on that pitching staff, and the Mets were clearly one of the better teams in baseball. But what if I told you that in addition to the team I just briefly went over, the 1985 New York Mets also had a pitcher who threw up to 168 miles an hour? Seriously. Well, sorta seriously. In early 1985, the managing editor of Sports Illustrated, Mark Mulvoy, realized that a cover date that year just happened to fall on April 1st, also of course known as April Fool's Day. He came up with an idea for a cool article to write, one that would mention April Fool's jokes in sports throughout the years, giving the idea to journalist George Plimpton. There was just one issue though, and that was the fact that there weren't enough April Fool's related sports occurrences to write a whole article on. So after not being able to find many examples, Plimpton was given permission by Mulvoy to, instead of talk about former pranks, create his very own. Plimpton went on to do the unthinkable and come up with an idea I don't think anybody was ready for. He created a fake player. But no, this wasn't in a video game, this was real life. He wrote an article called The Curious Case of Sid Finch, with details on this mysterious player. As the story goes, Sid Finch was a rookie in the New York Mets organization who could throw 168 miles an hour without even warming up. That's right, 168 miles an hour, and he had a very interesting lifestyle as well. Finch was a part pitcher, part yogi who played the French horn beautifully and looked like Goofy in one of Walt Disney's cartoon classics when he threw the ball, and wore one shoe, a heavy hiker's boot, while pitching. According to Plimpton, Finch grew up in an English orphanage and went on to be adopted by an archaeologist who later died in a plane crash in Nepal. After briefly going to Harvard University, he'd go to Tibet to learn yogic mastery of mind-body under the great poet saint Lama Milarepa. Finch decided not to pursue a baseball career, instead choosing to quote-unquote play the French horn or golf or something. The way Finch was introduced to the Mets was pretty interesting, taking place at a hotel. Yes, you heard that right. Bob Schaefer, the AAA manager of the Mets at the time, was heading back to the team hotel one night when he ran into Finch, who pointed out a soda bottle before proceeding to throw a baseball at it from about 60 feet 6 inches away. Well, legend has it the soda bottle exploded and the baseball kept going very far. Schaefer, who was in awe, then asked if he could do it again, and on he went to find the baseball, with it allegedly taking 15 minutes because of how far it went, while Schaefer found a tin can, and well, he came back and did it again. Sports Illustrated went all in on this prank, going as far as to get pictures of this so-called Sid Finch, getting to the point where the Mets themselves started to get into it, giving him his own jersey and number. They even went on to recruit a guy to play Finch, with Sports Illustrated photographer Lane Stewart recruiting a friend, Joe Burton, for the role, someone who was a middle school art teacher from Oak Park, Illinois. Burton posed as Finch for the pictures, usually with his face averted from the lens, and stood at 6 feet 4 inches tall while wearing a size 14 shoe. In late March of 1985, the story was let out to the world, and believe it or not, it worked. Tons of people fell for it. Mets fans, as you would expect, were ecstatic at the notion that they found such a player, flooding Sports Illustrated with requests for more information. Many more fell for it, too. A New York sports page editor complained to the Mets public relations director for allowing Sports Illustrated to break the news. 2 general managers called the commissioner of baseball at the time, asking asking about Finch, the St. Petersburg Times sent a reporter to find Finch, with a radio talk show host even claiming that he saw Finch pitch. Finch, but really Burton, got a locker between George Foster and Darryl Strawberry. The three major networks, CBS, NBC, and ABC, along with the local St. Petersburg, Florida newspapers, all sent reporters to Al Lang Stadium for a press conference about Finch. And at that press conference, which took place on April 2nd, Burton, obviously disguised as Finch, made the announcement that he would not play. There were even clues to show that this was a hoax, like when the first letter of every word in the subhead of the article about Finch spelt out Happy April Fool's Day. As ridiculous as the article was, and with this clue right in front of the public's eye, nobody seemed to catch it, and everybody believed that this character actually existed. At least a ton of people did. People continued to believe for about 2 more weeks until it was officially announced to be a hoax on April 15th. Plimpton went on to write a book on the whole episode, with ESPN later releasing a 30 for 30 documentary on it as well in 2015. And in August of 2015, the 30th anniversary of the event, the minor league team Brooklyn Cyclones had a Sid Finch bobblehead giveaway. With George Plimpton having passed, his son wound up throwing the first pitch that night, with Joe Burton, aka Sid Finch, showing up and signing autographs on the bobbleheads. Undoubtedly a story for the ages about the greatest and most interesting baseball player who never actually existed. Or does he? Maybe there's some truth to what Plimpton originally wrote and Finch is out in hiding. Probably not. A wise person once told me that a wise man believes none of what he hears and only half of what he sees, and I think this is a great circumstance to apply that. I guess the moral of the story here is to not believe everything you hear or see on the internet, especially if it's on April Fool's Day.